What's up, guys? This is Mitch from Boardco. Today, I want to talk about a question that I get on a really regular basis, and that is, what is the best time to buy a boat? What's the best time of year? What's the best month, season, whatever, if you're looking at buying a boat, and when would be the ideal time to look to purchase one? And so, first off, I want to talk about, there's some different criteria that will influence that question quite a bit. And that is primarily if you're looking at a new boat versus a used boat. And then if you're looking at a new boat in particular, are you looking at buying one that is just available at a dealership, or are you looking at buying a new boat that you custom build and pick the colors and options and things of that nature and get it made exactly the way you want it? So those criteria are going to influence that discussion a little bit. But what I want to kind of go through each time of the year and talk about what the pros and cons are to buying a boat in that particular time. Because each different time of the year is going to have different advantages or disadvantages if you're looking to buy a boat, depending on a number of parameters, from like when you can get the best deal, what kind of rebates are available if you're talking about a new boat, what the different marketplace looks like and availability and a lot of different things like that. So first off, let's jump in and talk about springtime. So springtime is the most common time of year that people end up purchasing boats. At Boardco, that's the time that we sell the most boats, is in the springtime. And it's a time when a lot of people are really looking around because they're getting geared up and ready for the season. So what are the advantages to buying a boat in the spring? Well, there's actually quite a few. The first advantage, and one that's probably the most noteworthy to talk about, is that there's a large amount of inventory available. And that's typically the case whether we're talking about new boats or where we're talking about used boats. If you're talking about new boats, typically there's more units available at a dealership at that time of year than any other time period. So there's more than those available in the summer. They typically have gotten a stock in that comes in prior to summertime, and they typically have more boats on hand than they'll normally have like in the winter time. So if you're looking for an in-stock unit at a dealership, getting one in the spring is typically a really decent time to look at buying a boat because you have a lot of different boats available. If you're looking at a used boat, it's also a pretty good time of year, mainly just because there's a lot of boats that are being brought in and traded into dealerships for guys that are buying new boats. Maybe they're boats that people purchased at the boat show. Maybe they have custom orders that they're waiting to have arrive and come in the spring or early summer. And so you have quite a few boats that are available come springtime. Other things that are kind of nice about spring is if you're custom building a boat, you might be able to get one in time. It kind of just depends on the manufacturer of the boat. It depends on what the availability is at the time that you're looking to get it. So if you're talking about late spring, like let's say you're looking in May, chances of custom building one and having it arrive for you so you can use it in the summertime or by like early midsummer is not really high. On the other side, if you're looking at the very beginning of the spring, chances are you may be able to custom order a boat and have one arrive for you in June or July or something like that. So you can still get plenty of use out of it for the season. So that's one other advantage. One other great thing about springtime is a really good time to trade in a boat. The reason why is because the values of boats are a little bit higher in the springtime than they were typically in the winter or in the fall. One of the main reasons for that when we're talking about trades is that typically there's a fair bit of cost that's involved for a dealership if they are trading a boat in. And that's going to be typically a capital cost, meaning that they're either going to have to write a check to trade your boat in, and it's going to take quite a bit of cash capital for the dealership, or they'll put it on a flooring line. And what a flooring line is it's basically where the dealership has essentially almost like an interest-only loan that they're paying interest on to have that boat sitting on their lot so it can be there, so they're not necessarily having to write a check and take cash out. So either way, whether it's talking about cost of capital or whether it's an actual flooring line cost, there's going to be costs if that dealer is holding the boat over time. So if you're trading a boat in let's say September, October time, and the dealer's looking at knowing that they're probably going to have to hold on to it through until springtime, there's going to be a cost involved with that, and that's going to be something that's going to be reflected in any trade values. So you're typically going to have a little bit higher trade value if you're trading a boat in the spring. Or if you're turning around and selling yourself, the values are going to be a little bit higher for a really similar reason. A lot of people don't necessarily want to buy a boat and have it sit all through the winter, sitting in storage or in a garage or wherever they're going to be keeping that boat. So When you're looking at buying a boat in the spring, those are the advantages. The disadvantages when we're talking about buying a boat in the spring, if you're looking at a used boat, like I mentioned, it's a great time to sell one. It's not as great of a time to buy one from a pricing discussion. You're going to spend a little bit more than you'd spend in the fall or the winter, but the advantage is you get to buy it and then typically go out and use it really quickly. It's not going to be a boat that you're going to be sitting and that you're going to have to buy and sit on, and if you finance it, making payments on it through the winter time. So buying one in the spring has got some advantages from that discussion as well. The other disadvantage to buying one in the springtime is if you're looking at buying a new boat, typically a lot of the factory rebates that were available in the late fall through the winter time are no longer available come spring, come like post boat shows time. So when I'm talking about spring, I'm primarily talking about like March through May, that type of window. And so that's going to be a con. The last one is if you're, like I mentioned before, if you're wanting to custom build a boat, you don't have a ton of time. So you're either going to end up having it arrive later and miss some time that you'd potentially be using that boat, or you'd be looking to get it in, but you're going to have a fairly tight time window or not be able to get it in at all. And it may show up and arrive for you in the fall time, right in time for you to not necessarily be able to use it that much this season. So that's not necessarily ideal depending on what part of the country you're in and where you're shopping. If you're down in the South where the season's pretty much all year long, it's not as big of a deal. If you're in where I am here in Utah or other areas where it gets cold and our water freezes in the wintertime, it's a little bit bigger factor. So those are the pros and cons when you're looking at boats in the springtime. Next one is the summertime. This one's fairly obvious for a lot of people, but probably the biggest advantage of buying a boat in the summertime is you can buy it and immediately take and use it. If you've got a trip coming up, you can buy a boat and then typically take it on that trip. The biggest delay that you're going to have is honestly probably just having the boat ready and available for you from the dealership, having them so that they can get it rigged and set for you to be able to take. We have people that come in and shopping for boats in the summertime on a regular basis when they come into our dealership and sometimes want to take the boat home that day or take it home the next day. And a boat's a little different than a car. They can't exactly drive it off the lot at the moment. We got to rig it and get things set and make sure it's prepped and ready for them to go. But the turnaround time is really quick and you can take and immediately use it. You're not going to be having a boat just that you buy and then just stuff away in storage for a period of time. So that's the advantage of that one. Other great advantage of in the summertime is trade-in values are typically quite high. It depends on what part of the summertime we're talking about, but that is a factor. All right, so now that I've covered the pros and cons of spring, let's jump into the summertime and what the good and bad is of buying a boat in the summer. Probably the biggest and most obvious benefit of buying a boat in the summer is you can buy it and immediately take it out and use it. So as long as the boat can be set and rigged and ready to roll for you, it's basically you can take it and go and start using it from day one. Here in like Utah where we're at, it's kind of a nice thing. You're able to go and take it. The water's warm. Kids are out of school so a lot of time. It's basically set and ready to go. So that part is a really nice benefit of getting a boat in the summertime. The other advantage when you're talking about getting a boat in the summer is if you currently have a boat and you're wanting to trade it in, trade-in values are typically quite good come summertime, because you can buy a boat and trade it in and have it be able to be turned around, sold by a dealership. They're not going to be sitting on that boat for a long period of time, and that's just a really nice thing for the boat dealer. If you're wanting to try and offload your boat, you can typically get a higher trade-in value than other times of the year, which is a real nice advantage. You're also going to be able to buy a boat and not necessarily have to pay for it or have it sit there during the time period while you're not using it, which is a nice advantage. Probably the other great advantage when you're talking about getting a boat in the summertime is depending on what part of the summer we're talking about, you may have the option of ordering a boat that is a next model year boat around the time that those model years come out or a little bit early. So that doesn't mean that you're going to be able to order a boat and have it arrive for you in June. But typically what that would mean is if you're wanting to, if you want to be patient, you want to get first ride out. So if you've got like, let's say a 2024 model boat coming out and you want to get one of the first ones that comes off the line, if they've got some new technology or some new features that are coming out on it, they're really appealing for you. You can oftentimes go in and order a boat in May or June and have that boat arrive for you typically in August sometime. So you may miss part of the summertime while you're waiting for that boat, but if you have a boat you're currently using and arrange to either sell it or trade it in as soon as around the time that boat arrives, it can be a way to jump on and get the next year's boat model early. So you could get let's say a 2024 model year boat in the summer of 2023 and use it for a few months before putting it away for the winter time. And it basically gives you a leg up on having a newer model year boat, which can be a really nice thing depending on what you're looking for. So that can be an advantage to it. The last thing I will throw in there is come summertime, you also may have the ability to get, if you're talking about late summer, so let's say August or so, if there's remaining leftover inventory or if there's dealer demo boats or things like that, sometimes those become available around that time period. So once again, you'd be going through the bulk of the summer without necessarily having a boat, but you may be able to get a little bit of a deal, or if you got a dealer demo that you're looking at, something along those lines, that may come available for you around that time. Different dealers will handle those a little bit differently, just depending on what part of the country you're in and what kind of a setup they run. But that's another potential opportunity if you're looking at a boat in the summer. Now, the downsides to getting a boat in the summer. Number one is, unless you're talking about what I just mentioned, like dealer demos or something at the very end of the summer, there's not typically any major discounts or factory rebates or things like that in the summertime. The other downside is that typically availability or selection is not nearly as good as what you would otherwise want. So whether you're talking about a new boat or a used boat, generally speaking, you're not going to be having a wide variety of boats to choose from, or at least not nearly as wide as available in other times of the year. Other downsides to buying one right in the summer is your availability on getting a custom built boat is very small, unless you're talking about what I just mentioned. If you're getting like a next generation model year and having it arrive for you in August or September or something like that, that may be an available thing for you, which could be kind of nice. The last thing is, if you're talking about a used boat, once again, you can buy one and get out and use it in the summertime, but the downside is you're probably going to be paying a little bit of a premium for that boat for that reason. So the one nice thing you can have is that there's, as far as particularly selling your boat in the summertime, is if you're willing to part with it in, let's say, June or July, there's just not that many boats that are available, because a lot of people are wanting to wait to the end of the season or before the season where they can get a new boat, or they wait till the end of the season when they're done using it to sell it. So if you're wanting to sell it during that time period, that's also can be a big win, because you can get a little bit more out of it, because the selection just is not nearly as large come June or July as it is during other times of the year. So that's summertime. So next we move into fall. So fall is, generally speaking, if we're talking about financially, though there's some negatives to it, but overall it would be the time of year that I would probably prefer to buy a boat is in the fall time, or let's just say basically end of the summer to the end of the year. So fall through early winter time through the end of December. So talking about advantages, first few advantages. Number one is, if you're looking to get a new boat, there's a lot of different things that are available. Number one, if you're looking for, if there's any leftover previous model year boats, or let's say we're here at the end of 2022 right now, if there's any 2022 model year boats that were still available, those ones could be available at a little bit of a deal. Oftentimes, like I mentioned, similarly to what we were talking about at the end of summer, there also may be dealer demo boats or other things like that you might be able to get a little bit of a deal on. The only downside with those is that you just kind of get what you get. There's probably not a really wide variety, wide selection. If all that's available is a red one and you want blue, you might be out of luck, because that's all there is red. So, but that is an available thing that sometimes is available for you in the fall if they're not completely sold out. Another advantage to the fall is, if you're shopping for a new boat, there's typically more rebates that are available come fall time than there are in other times of the year. So there's a lot of manufacturer incentives, because they like to try and keep their production line building boats at a consistent pace throughout the entire year. So whether we're talking about March or we're talking about October, the different boat manufacturers want to build the same number of boats every single day because it makes it so that their factory line can keep functioning at the most efficient level. So they give different rebates oftentimes through the fall and into the winter time, going up typically through boat shows, that can be an extra bonus incentive for being able to buy a boat during that time period of the year, which can be a really nice thing. So that is one advantage. Another great advantage is that if you're looking to buy a boat that's in stock, you typically can take advantage of those rebates. You also have a wide variety to choose from. Typically, that's the time when dealers are getting boats that are coming into stock. And so you have quite a decent selection that would be coming in at a pretty decent price. The other piece that we can talk about on that is if you're looking to custom build a boat that would arrive in the winter or the following spring, that can be a great time to custom build a boat. So one other big advantage there is if you have a boat that you're wanting to custom build, the fall can be an excellent time to do that. You get to take advantage of those factory rebates. You also can typically get a little bit of a deal on the boat depending on how the dealer functions and works. But oftentimes you can just get probably the best pricing of the entire year during that time frame. Now, there's a difference between, like, let's say early fall versus late fall and early winter. Typically at most dealerships, if you're wanting to buy a boat that's there on the lot and it's September, you're probably not going to get a crazy great deal on that boat because you're going to get a next generation model year boat that you can take and use. And a lot of times some of the factory rebates haven't kicked in just yet. But if you're looking at a boat from October, November, December time, that's typically when the boat manufacturers roll out their largest rebates of the year. And then they do their second largest rebates come after the first of the year. So January through March, typically, covering, let's say, we'll call it boat show season. So that's going to be a great time of year to buy a boat and a great time of year to build a boat. The only real downside when we're talking about in the fall time is trade values are going to typically be a little bit lower, once again, depending on what part of the fall we're talking about. But the trade values are going to be down a little bit compared to what they were in the summertime and in the spring. And so, but it can be a great way or a great time to go through and try and actually sell your boat, not necessarily because the prices are going to be the best, but mainly because you typically will have a fairly big window that you have that you can actually sell a boat. So one program that, like, a lot of our customers will do is that they'll custom build a boat in the fall time, have it so it arrives and shows up in the late winter, early springtime, and they'll have a window of few months that they have that they can sell their boat and typically try and get top dollar out of it when they're turning around and selling it. And that's something, whether they're selling it on their own or whether we're selling it on consignment for them, that is an available thing that they have. So it gives them a window that they can sell their boat so they can get a great deal on the new one and also try and maximize their value out of their current boat that they're buying, just because they can sell it on consignment and they have a really wide window that they can do that. That's obviously going to be different depending on the dealership that you're working with, but at Boardco, that's the way that we typically do things. Is we have a special consignment program for people that are buying boats from us, and it ends up being a really great thing. And typically, the most advantageous time of the year for somebody to buy a boat, if they're custom building one, is typically in that fall time. In other words, towards the end of the fall in through the winter time is the best time to custom order a boat. It arrives in plenty of time for them to use it in the spring. They get a wide window to try and sell their boat, and they can take advantage of the most factory rebates. The downsides to ordering a boat in the fall is you're going to buy it and you're probably going to sit on it for a while. So early fall time, not necessarily, but if you're talking October, November time and later, you're going to be sitting on that boat for a while. It's going to be something that you're going to get and probably put it away in storage and not use it again until the next spring. We have lots of people that will custom build boats, have it arrive at that time, and they'll park it in the garage and oftentimes go have family sleepovers in the boat because they're so excited to go and use it once the springtime rolls around. So there's some advantages to that, but really it can be a little bit, I don't know if I want to say frustrating, but it can be it's not as fun when you're not able to go and start using it. It builds the anticipation for sure if you're being able to go out and actually use that boat come springtime. So that's pretty nice. The next one is talking about winter. So winter is going to have a lot of the advantages and some of the drawbacks that I mentioned as we were talking about with fall. It's when we move into let's say later winter time, so let's say January through end of February time, that's going to be the time of year when that's going to typically have the second largest rebates that are available from the boat manufacturers. That's when a lot of boat shows are going on, and that can be a really great time to buy a boat, particularly if you're wanting to custom build one. If you're wanting to buy a boat that's available in stock, there's a large selection. If you're shopping for a used boat, that's typically actually the best time of year to potentially buy one. It's when there's a number of them that are available. You can typically get a pretty solid deal on a used boat. So it's just a great time to try and buy one because there's just not that much interest going on. So people are willing to take a little bit of a deal because chances are they're not going to be able to sell that boat until springtime. One thing to just be aware of is that a lot of times people hold on and wait and not sell their used boat until the spring, or not willing to take a lower offer because they know it'll sell really easily come springtime. But it does give you available to try and sniff out some deals if you're looking for a used boat to get a little bit of a deal on one. So in talking and looking at that, that's a question a lot of people have is the boat show the best time of year to buy a boat? Is there another time of year that's better? Realistically, the boat show is a fantastic time to buy a boat. The only other time that might potentially be slightly better is if you build it if you have one that you build or buy in the winter time. But you would be sitting on it a little bit longer than if you have one built or buy one at the boat show. And then at the boat show, if you're trading your boat straight in, typically the trade-in values are a little bit higher than they would be if you're doing it in late fall or early winter time. So there's some minor pros and cons there, but generally speaking, if you're looking financially for the best time of year to buy a boat, you're probably talking about through the fall and winter time. Particularly if you're looking for a used one, but whether new or used, custom build or a boat in stock, that's going to be your best time from a financial perspective to buy a boat. But the downside is that you're going to be waiting longer to be able to use it. But it does help dealers and manufacturers. And so it gives some additional incentives to try and make it so that you'd want to buy a boat in the off season when you're not able to necessarily take it straight to the lake and go and have fun with your family. So I hope this has been a helpful breakdown for you and gives you a little bit of an idea of when you're shopping and looking around for a boat, when the best time of year is to buy it. As with most things that we talk about here on the show, it's not just a clear cut and dry winner. It's not something that's necessarily just that one thing wins across the board. There's pros and cons to each one, and there's going to be advantages to buying a boat in the springtime or in the summer. There's going to be advantages to buying one in the fall or in the winter. It just depends on your specific situation and what's important to you and what your kind of time frame looks like. But especially if you're looking at like a new boat, there's not going to be radical differences from one to another. It may just depend on availability and if the boat that you're looking to try and get is something that's available to you at that time. If you're talking about used boats, summertime is a good time to buy one, but if you're wanting to get the best deal on one, typically in the fall or the winter is the best time of year to buy a boat and get a bit of a deal on one on a used one. So there's lots of things to consider there. There's other different factors that come into play, such as other different incentives and things like that are offered from manufacturers at different times of the year. But as a general rule, there's going to be advantages and disadvantages to each time of the year. And I hope this has been a helpful breakdown to give you an idea of each of these. So thanks a ton for tuning in. If you have any questions, please reach out to us. Let us know by phone, email, leave a comment in wherever you're listening or watching this. And we'd be more than happy to answer any questions that you have and give you more information on the things that are most helpful for you. Once again, this is Mitch from Boardco. Thanks for spending some time with us, and we'll talk to you later.